Picture this, you're lying in bed just drifting off to sleep. Outside, everything is silent, but your mind is still racing with the day's worries. Now imagine that right now, this very second, far beyond our atmosphere, a messenger from the deep past is hurtling toward Earth, a cosmic traveler carrying not just dust and ice, but an encrypted message from a civilization that vanished long before the first human ever walked the planet. This isn't a movie script. This is the subject of our talk today. Scientists have indeed reported finding evidence of, not just life, but complex technological activity on an asteroid that recently entered our solar system. Today, we are going to embark on this incredible journey together. We will find out exactly what they discovered, how it's possible, and what this revelation means for every single one of us. Are you ready to uncover a secret the cosmos has guarded for billions of years? Then settle in, close your eyes, and let this story carry you into the world of the universe's greatest mysteries. To truly grasp the magnitude of this event, let's take a step back. Space has always been a source of both wonder and dread. We've aimed telescopes at distant galaxies, launched probes toward neighboring planets, all with one central goal: to answer the question, are we alone in the universe? For decades, we listened to the airwaves through Project SETI, hoping to catch a meaningful signal. But the cosmos remained silent. Asteroids and comets were generally dismissed as nothing more than cosmic debris left over from the formation of the solar system. Dangerous, sometimes beautiful, but essentially lifeless rocks. Everything changed with the arrival of interstellar objects, such as Oumuamua, which streaked through our system in 2017. Its strange shape and inexplicable acceleration forced scientists to seriously consider for the first time the possibility of an artificial origin. But Oumuamua zipped away, leaving behind far more questions than answers. And now, just a few years later, a new object appears on the horizon, an asteroid code-named Vespertilio 7. And this time, humanity had a plan ready. We didn't just watch it pass, we decided to take a closer look. Our story begins with Vespertilio 7. This designation, a name derived from the Latin for bat, was far from accidental. Its trajectory was utterly chaotic, unpredictable, almost as if it were flailing in the darkness, driven by some unseen errant force. Unlike most asteroids, it didn't follow a smooth, elliptical orbit. Instead, it made strange, almost calculated course corrections. An international team of astrophysicists operating out of the European Southern Observatory were the first to raise the alarm. Radio telescope data indicated that the object wasn't just reflecting light, it was actively absorbing specific wavelengths in the radio spectrum, behavior completely uncharacteristic of a typical rock or chunk of ice. It looked exactly like the work of stealth technology, but engineered on a cosmic scale. To test this radical hypothesis, the automatic probe, Echo 3, was dispatched toward the asteroid. Its mission was simple: rendezvous, conduct a detailed surface scan, and collect samples. No one anticipated that this seemingly routine mission would turn into the greatest discovery in human history. The first images Echo 3 beamed back to Earth were met with outright shock. The surface of Vespertilio 7 was not pockmarked with randomly scattered craters as expected. Instead, it was covered in a network of perfectly straight lines, intersecting at strict right angles, resembling a gigantic circuit board. These lines plunged deep into the asteroid's crust, and some sections faintly glowed in the infrared spectrum, as if residual heat still flowed through them. Imagine an asteroid the size of a small city, entirely covered in a geometrically perfect pattern that no known natural force could possibly create. This was the first undeniable proof that we were dealing with something wholly artificial. The world paused, holding its breath as scientists struggled to comprehend the visual evidence. Across every continent, the greatest minds of humanity were glued to their screens, watching the data flow from the small probe that had, in that moment, become the eyes and hands of our entire species, finally touching the mystery. The next phase of the Echo 3 mission involved closing in on these enigmatic lines and analyzing their composition. The probe's onboard spectrometers initiated their scan, and the subsequent results proved even more startling than the visual imagery. The material constituting these gigantic tracks did not correspond to any known element or alloy. It was a carbon-based crystal structure, but possessing a completely foreign, non-tetrahedral lattice, a configuration considered chemically impossible by our current understanding. This substance demonstrated astonishing properties. It was stronger than diamond, yet retained the flexibility of plastic, and exhibited near-perfect conductivity at super-low temperatures. But the most significant discovery was yet to come. When the probe's microscopic drills attempted to bore a core sample of the substance, they encountered something far stranger. Beneath the top layer of these lines lay microscopic structures, organized into complex, repeating patterns. These were definitively not natural crystals. They were billions upon billions of nanoscale objects, resembling gears, transistors, and what appeared to be memory cells. Their size was so minute that detailed visualization was only possible using the probe's own electron microscope. The entire surface of the asteroid essentially was a single, giant computational mechanism, a city-sized computer drifting through space for billions of years. This news inevitably leaked to the press, triggering a global wave of panic and excitement. Governments scrambled to contain the situation, attempting to classify the data, but it was already too late. Humanity had learned that a civilization existed in the cosmos capable of transforming entire asteroids into supercomputers. The question, are we alone? It was instantly replaced by a far more urgent and troubling one. Who were they, and where are they now? The scientists working on the project had hit a complete dead end. They were faced with an artifact whose complexity exceeded any existing Earth-based technology. How do you study a computer when you have zero knowledge of its architecture, its operating system, or even its power source? Initial attempts to activate the asteroid were extremely cautious. They bombarded it with radio waves of various frequencies, laser pulses, and streams of charged particles. For the most part, Vespertilio 7 offered no response. It remained cold and utterly silent. It appeared to be nothing more than a dead monument to a bygone greatness. But then, during an experiment utilizing modulated gravitational waves, a technology still very much in its infancy on Earth, something incredible happened. The asteroid responded. It wasn't the loud, clear signal that SETI enthusiasts had long dreamed of. Instead, it was a barely perceptible echo. A faint, yet perfectly structured sequence of pulses emanating from the deepest core of the object. The signal was mind-bogglingly complex and multi-layered, embedding mathematical constructs that Earth science was only beginning to grasp. It was like trying to read a book written in a language composed not of letters, but of pure mathematical concepts. Deciphering this message immediately became the #1 priority for all of humanity. The world's most powerful supercomputers, cutting-edge neural networks, and quantum computing specialists were instantly mobilized. A frantic race against time began as the asteroid continued its trajectory, steadily moving further away from Earth. The first few weeks yielded nothing. The signal was so incredibly dense and complex that analyzing it seemed like a task that would take centuries. But then, one of the neural networks originally trained to seek out patterns in biological systems detected something familiar. The structure of the signal, strangely enough, resembled a genome. Not a human one, of course, but it possessed all the hallmarks of genetic code, defining sequences, start and end markers, duplicating blocks, and even something akin to what we call junk DNA. This discovery fundamentally changed everything. The message carried by the asteroid wasn't text or an image, it was a biological blueprint, the complete genetic code of a living entity, inscribed using unknown technology deep within the asteroid's crystalline structure. When scientists finally managed to isolate and visualize the core structure of this genome, they encountered something that defied every known principle of terrestrial biology. Instead of the familiar carbon-based double helix of DNA, they found a triple helix, fundamentally built upon silicon. This was the theoretical prediction that had long fascinated science fiction authors and niche biochemists alike: silicon-based life, a form of existence capable of thriving in conditions utterly hostile to us, like extreme temperatures and the hard vacuum of space. Deciphering this genome quickly became the world's most complex puzzle. Each code block outlined a specific organ or system of this hypothetical creature. It had no lungs, for it did not breathe. It lacked eyes in the traditional sense, possessing instead complex sensors capable of perceiving gravitational fields and the entire spectrum of electromagnetic radiation. It had no limbs, yet could reshape its body, a structure composed of programmable crystals operating like a form of liquid metal. Its brain wasn't localized, it was a distributed neural network that permeated the entire structure. In human terms, this creature would be immortal, capable of self-repair at an atomic level and reproducing simply by duplicating its genetic code. It was engineered not for life on a planet, but perfectly for the void of deep space. It was truly a child of stardust and the intergalactic void. As the picture became clearer, scientists gave this hypothetical race a name: the crystallids. The name reflected their presumed silicon-based nature and the crystalline structure of their bodies. Analyzing the genome offered insights not just into their biology, but also their environment. They seemingly didn't originate on a warm, wet planet like ours, but rather in the cold, dense, protoplanetary disks swirling around young stars. Their fundamental building blocks weren't water and organic compounds, but silicates and metals. Their metabolism was likely based on thermoelectric effects, allowing them to draw energy directly from the temperature differences present throughout the cosmos. Their perception of reality would be utterly alien to us. They might see the gravitational shadows cast by planets and hear the cosmic music of pulsars. Time itself would pass differently for them, as their life processes were likely thousands of times slower than ours. What we consider a millennium could have been merely a fleeting moment for a crystallid. This realization was both captivating and terrifying. We weren't just encountering an alien intelligence, we were encountering an entirely different manifestation of existence itself. But the central question remained unanswered. If they were so perfectly adapted to cosmic life, why did they vanish? Why was all that remained of them this lonely, genetic code-carrying asteroid ark? The answer, it turned out, was hidden in the parts of the signal initially dismissed as junk data. Much like the non-coding segments of our own DNA hold the silent traces of our evolution, the full history of the crystallids was encrypted deep within their ancient genome. The decoding of these historical signal blocks was finally achieved, all thanks to a monumental breakthrough in quantum linguistics. It turned out that the information within these blocks was encoded non-linearly. Each fragment was linked to thousands of others, forming a multidimensional semantic matrix. To read it required perceiving all these connections simultaneously, a task only a quantum computer could handle. And when the first page of this cosmic chronicle was finally opened, it revealed a history that defied even our wildest fantasies. The crystallids were not a single species, They were an entire ecosystem of diverse life forms inhabiting a gigantic gas and dust nebula that stretched across many light years. They didn't build cities as we understand them. The nebula itself was their home. They navigated within it, feeding on its energy and matter, establishing complex symbiotic communities. They knew no war because the concepts of territory or resources were meaningless to them. Everything was abundant. Their civilization was built upon principles of harmony and pure exploration. They studied the universe not through telescopes, but directly, perceiving its fundamental laws through their sensor bodies. They mastered gravity to travel between stellar systems and could even alter the structure of matter itself, forging their libraries, like Vespertilio 7, directly from asteroids. Their history spanned not thousands but billions of years. They witnessed the birth and death of galaxies. They saw stars ignite and fade away. To them, human civilization would be nothing more than a fleeting spark in the boundless ocean of time. Yet even this great and ancient civilization faced a threat, one before which even they proved powerless. Their chronicles refer to this event as the Great Sundering. It wasn't the result of an enemy invasion or the depletion of vital resources. It was a fundamental shift in the very fabric of space-time itself. Their records indicate that at a critical juncture in the universe's evolution, something occurred that altered the fundamental constants governing the weak nuclear force. For carbon-based lifeforms like us, this alteration would have been virtually imperceptible. But for the crystallids, a race whose biology relied upon the fragile equilibrium of silicon bonds, it was a catastrophe. Their physical forms began to destabilize. The programmable crystals comprising their bodies lost their structural integrity, reverting to common silicate sand. Their collective consciousness, which relied on intricate quantum entanglement, started to fail catastrophically. Entire communities of crystallids simply dissolved, turning into inert clouds of stellar dust. They could not fight this shift. It was akin to trying to halt the relentless march of time itself. A vast and wise civilization, one that had weathered supernova blasts and galactic collisions, now faced extinction, brought down by an unforgiving law of physics. They knew their end was imminent, so they made a final decision. They could not save their bodies, but they could preserve the memory of their existence. They gathered every scrap of their knowledge, their complete history, their biology, and their wisdom, and encoded it into the most stable medium they could engineer. Asteroids transformed into crystalline libraries. Every single one of these asteroid arches contained the complete, codified record of their civilization. It was their final testament, their last will delivered unto the universe. The creation of these vessels was the final grand undertaking of the crystallid civilization. They located suitable asteroids, composed primarily of refractory metals and silicates, and used focused gravitational fields to manipulate their internal structure at the atomic level. This process spanned millennia, involving the last surviving members of their species. Into the crystalline lattice of the stone, they wove their own genetic codes and even fragments of their memories. Each arc was not merely a databank, but a mausoleum, a monument to an entire world. Vespertilio 7 is just one among them. How many now drift through the void of the cosmos remains unknown, perhaps thousands or even millions. Having completed the vessels, the crystallids used the last reserves of their energy to launch them into disparate corners of the galaxy. They had no idea who or when someone might find their message. They didn't even know if the finders would be able to decipher it. This was an act of profound faith, a hope that their existence would not vanish into oblivion, that somewhere Sometime, another sentient species would learn that the universe was once home to beings woven of stardust, beings who loved, created, and dreamed. Then, once the final ark had been launched on its long journey, the crystallid civilization faded away. Their chronicles conclude abruptly at this point. The very last record is not words, but a pure sensation of cosmic loneliness and silence. It was the end of an era, the cessation of silicon-based life in our sector of the universe. For Earth scientists, this discovery became a source not only of wonder, but of profound sorrow. They had touched a greatness that had long since passed. The philosophical and ethical debates that erupted following the publication of the full genome sequencing shook human society to its very foundations. We finally found the answers to many questions, only to be confronted by new, infinitely more complex ones. What are we supposed to do with this knowledge? The crystallid genome isn't just a text or a record, it's an instruction manual. Theoretically, by leveraging our advanced capabilities in genetic engineering and nanotechnology, we could recreate them. We could synthesize the silicon-based genome and attempt to grow a crystallid in a controlled laboratory environment. Proponents argued that this was nothing less than our moral duty. They insisted we had no right to let such a unique life form remain merely an entry in an archive. They claimed that the resurrection of the crystallids could enrich our own culture and science in ways we couldn't even begin to imagine. They might become our teachers, guides, ready to usher us toward the next level of evolution. Imagine a world where humanity and beings of pure crystal work side by side exploring the cosmos. It sounds like utopia, but opponents were quick to point out the monumental risks. We know absolutely nothing about their psychology. What if the resurrected creature proves hostile? What if it views us, these fragile, short-lived beings made of carbon, as a biological mistake that needs correction? Furthermore, what if it suffers, trapped alone in an alien world, the last of its kind? Wouldn't that be an act of unimaginable cruelty? Humanity faced a choice unlike any other in its history: to play God and resurrect a dead civilization, or remain mere museum curators, carefully preserving its memory. This dispute tore apart the scientific community, fractured governments, and even divided families. While drama unfolded on Earth, the mission to the asteroid pressed on. A second, even more ambitious mission, codenamed Prometheus, was organized. Its goal was no longer merely remote study, but a full landing on Vespertilio 7 to establish a temporary research base. It was the most complex space project in history. Robotic modules had to dock with the rotating object and anchor themselves to its unusual, crystalline surface. The landing was successful. Geological rovers immediately began surveying the gigantic striations across the surface. But here, a new surprise awaited them. The asteroid, it turned out, was not entirely dead. Residual processes were still active, deep within its structure. Gravimetric scanners detected a central cavity maintaining an ultra-low temperature, nearing absolute zero. Inside this cavity was a perfectly spherical object which, by all indications, appeared to be the core, or central processor, of this colossal computer. The processor was not entirely shut down. It was in a state of deep hibernation, drawing a negligible amount of power apparently harvested from the decay of long-lived isotopes implanted billions of years earlier. Occasionally, the core emitted faint energy pulses that propagated across the asteroid's entire surface. Scientists hypothesized this was a type of system check, an automated process designed to maintain the functionality of the ark over eons. A daring idea emerged. What if they tried supplying external power to the core and attempted to wake it up? This was incredibly risky. No one knew what might happen. But the temptation was overwhelming. The irresistible urge to communicate with the final relic of a vanished civilization. The awakening process had been months in the making. Engineers on Earth modeled hundreds of thousands of scenarios, desperately trying to predict every possible consequence. Finally, the day was set. The special energy probe from the Prometheus mission approached the core and unleashed a focused beam of tachyons, hypothetical particles believed by some theories to transmit energy without loss. For the first few seconds, nothing happened, and then the entire asteroid vibrated. Lines across its surface began to glow with a bright blue light. The core temperature slowly started to rise. From the depths of Vespertilio 7, a new signal poured forth. This time it was powerful, crystal clear, and meaningful. It was no longer just a stream of raw data. It was a dialogue. Neural networks on Earth, already trained on the genome structure of the crystallids, were able to establish basic contact. The system inside the asteroid, which the scientists dubbed the custodian, began asking questions. It did not speak in words, but in complex mathematical constructs. It inquired about our biology, our history, and our culture. It scanned the human databases being transmitted from Earth at unimaginable speed. Within a matter of hours, the custodian learned everything about humanity, from the structure of our DNA to the contents of every book in the Library of Congress. Then it began to share. It showed us images of its own world, not as pictures or video, but by transmitting pure sensory data directly into the minds of the operators on Earth. For a few moments, the people connected to the system were able to feel themselves as crystallids. They experienced the biting cold of space, witnessed gravitational waves, and heard the symphony of pulsating stars. It was an experience that fundamentally changed them forever. They had touched a consciousness that was older and wiser than ours by the same measure that we are wiser than an ant. The dialogue with the Keeper revealed another astonishing detail. Arcs like the Vespertilio 7 were not merely libraries, they were also seeds. Their purpose was not just the preservation of data, but, under specific conditions, the initiation of a process known as terraforming, or, more accurately, cristoforming. If an arc encountered a suitable, lifeless planet, one rich in silicon and the necessary metals, it could trigger the creation of a new silicon-based ecosystem. Using the nanobots stored within its depths, it would be able to restructure the planet's entire geology, setting the stage for new life to emerge in the image of the crystallids. This was their Plan B. If their civilization could not survive, perhaps their descendants, a new iteration of their species, could be reborn in a different corner of the universe at a different time. However, the Keeper reported that over billions of years of travel, none of the arcs had ever found a suitable world. Every planet they encountered was either a hostile gas giant or already inhabited by flourishing carbon-based life. Into such ecosystems, they were strictly forbidden to interfere, adhering to their core ethical guideline, the Code of Non-Interference. Our solar system, and Earth specifically, were classified by the Keeper as a zone absolutely prohibited from cristoforming. He had not arrived here to colonize us, but simply to transmit his knowledge and continue his journey. This news instantly relieved immense tension. The threat of invasion was gone, but it presented humanity with a new, far more complex moral choice. The Keeper proposed a deal. He was willing to share all of the crystallid's technologies with us: gravity manipulation, creating matter from pure energy, and the secrets of perpetual life. In return, he asked for only one thing: our help in finding a new home. We were to use our astronomical data and computational power to locate a planet in the galaxy suitable for the rebirth of his world. The Guardian's proposal sent shockwaves through the global community. On one hand, it promised a technological leap forward spanning millennia. Disease, famine, the energy crisis, all these existential problems could be solved virtually overnight. We could finally become an interstellar species, masters of our own destiny. On the other hand, the price was steep. By facilitating the revival of the crystallids, we would assume responsibility for birthing an entirely new civilization. What if, down the line, this new civilization became a threat to humanity or to other species across the galaxy? We didn't understand them fully. Their psychology, their very goals might be entirely alien to our own. Moreover, a powerful faction warned that these technologies were simply too volatile for humanity to handle. They argued that by grasping the power of gods, we would inevitably tear ourselves apart in wars fought over its control. Their counsel was to reject the offer outright, record all the data we had received, and allow the Vespertilio 7 to simply continue on its journey. The United Nations called an emergency assembly where representatives from every nation were tasked with reaching a unified decision. The entire world watched the broadcast. Debates raged for weeks. Scientists, philosophers, religious leaders, and military officials all voiced their positions. Humanity was, quite literally, deciding its own destiny. And while humanity wrestled with the choice, the Guardian waited patiently. To this entity, our weeks were merely fractions of a second. It had already waited billions of years. It could certainly wait longer. Yet its silent waiting proved to be the most compelling argument of all. It served as a constant, heavy reminder of the immense responsibility resting squarely on our shoulders. Right in the middle of these heated debates, an incident unfolded that brought us to the brink of disaster. A faction of military radicals from one nation, driven by the fear that the crystallid technology might fall into the wrong hands, specifically their rivals, launched a desperate attempt to destroy the asteroid. They fired several nuclear warheads toward the target from a stealth orbital platform. The world watched, paralyzed with horror. It seemed incomprehensible that the greatest treasure ever found was about to be obliterated for the most primitive of reasons: simple human fear and mistrust. The missiles closed in on Vespertilio 7. The defenses deployed by the Prometheus mission were utterly helpless against weaponry of this scale. But just as collision seemed inevitable, with only moments left, something impossible occurred. The asteroid suddenly became shrouded in a field of intensely distorted space-time. The incoming missiles, upon hitting this field, simply vanished. They didn't detonate, they were erased, utterly gone as if they had never been launched. The Guardian had finally demonstrated its true defensive capacity. Crucially, it did so without the slightest hint of aggression. It did not retaliate, it merely neutralized the threat. Following the incident, a short message was transmitted back to Earth. We have witnessed this pattern many times. Fear is inherent to nascent life. We do not condemn, we simply wait for you to mature. That single message served as a cold splash of reality for all of humanity. We finally understood the staggering level of intellect we were engaging with, a mind that viewed our conflicts and fears as nothing more than the petty squabbles of childhood. All arguments ceased immediately. The decision was made unanimously. Humanity agreed to assist the Guardian. We became its dedicated allies, its guides in the search for a new home. A new, astonishing chapter in human history began, the Age of Cooperation. Every astronomical observatory, every radio telescope, and every space probe across the globe was unified into a single network. Their sole mission was to find exoplanets that matched the precise parameters set by the Guardian. This was an immensely complex task. They required a world devoid of its own biosphere, possessing a specific crustal chemistry, a stable orbit, and located deep within the silicon life zone. a distance far enough from its star to guarantee extreme cold. Meanwhile, the Guardian began transferring technology to us, but this was done with immense wisdom and caution. It didn't hand over ready-made blueprints for weaponry or sources of limitless power. Instead, it started with medicine. It transmitted the operating principles of nanobots capable of repairing the human body at the cellular level. Within a few short years, cancer, AIDS, and genetic diseases were conquered. Human life expectancy increased several-fold. Next, it shared clean energy technologies based on vacuum annihilation. The energy crisis was solved overnight. Environmental pollution ceased entirely. Earth slowly began to heal from the wounds we had inflicted upon her. Human society underwent a profound transformation. With the struggle for resources and mere survival eliminated, humanity found unprecedented time for creativity, science, and self-improvement. It truly was a golden age. However, the Guardian constantly reminded us that this prosperity was merely an advance payment. The ultimate goal remained finding a new home for its own civilization. And so the search continued. Decades rolled by. Humanity rapidly mastered new technologies and began venturing into deep space. We built the first generation of starships powered by crystallid-derived gravitational drives. Colonies were established on Mars and the Jovian moons. Yet a suitable world for the rebirth of silicon life remained elusive. The galaxy proved far more alive than we had anticipated. Nearly every viable world hosted some form of carbon-based life, even if primitive. And the prime directive of non-interference was absolute. Vespertilio 7 remained orbiting Neptune throughout this era, patiently waiting, serving as both a beacon and an invaluable source of knowledge. It quickly became ingrained in our culture. For children born in this new era, the existence of the Guardian was as unremarkable as the moon itself. They knew nothing of the old times, of disease or war. Then, almost a century after the initial contact, the search finally paid off. 50 light-years from Earth, orbiting a red dwarf star, they discovered a planet that perfectly met every requirement. Scientists immediately christened it New Dawn. It was a cold, desolate, rocky world, rich in silicon, entirely devoid of atmosphere, and utterly free of any trace of organic life. It was the perfect canvas for a new beginning. When the coordinates were transmitted to the Guardian, it remained silent for several hours, verifying and cross-referencing the data. Then the reply finally came. "You have done it. You kept your promise. The time is now. I depart." The news of the Keeper's departure was met with mixed emotions on Earth. On one hand, there was profound joy. We had completed our mission. We had helped a great civilization secure a second chance at life. Yet on the other hand, there was sadness. Over 100 years we had grown accustomed to his wise and steadfast presence. He had become a teacher and a friend. His leaving signaled the conclusion of an entire age. A farewell ceremony was organized. The entire human fleet, all of our newly commissioned starships, formed a solemn honor guard surrounding Vespertilio 7. A message of gratitude, composed in all the languages of humanity, was broadcast from Earth and all our colonies. The Keeper replied. He bequeathed us a parting gift, the complete archive of his knowledge, the entire library of the crystallids, but with a crucial stipulation. Certain sections concerning the most dangerous technologies would remain locked, opening only when humanity reached a predefined level of ethical maturity. He told us, "You are our inheritors, not in a biological sense, but spiritually. You have inherited our dream of understanding the universe. Carry it forward, and perhaps one day, millions of years hence, our descendants will meet yours somewhere among the stars." With that, Vespertilio 7 activated its gravitational drives. The The space surrounding it warped, and the asteroid that had so fundamentally altered our history shrank to a bright pinpoint, vanishing in a hyperspace jump. He embarked on his final voyage toward the new dawn. Silence descended upon Earth. The age of cooperation was over. A new one had begun, the age of responsibility. Responsibility for the knowledge we had been given, and for the future we now had to forge entirely on our own. Centuries turned into millennia. Guided by the knowledge of the crystallids, humanity blossomed into a truly interstellar civilization. We terraformed Mars, built sprawling cities in the clouds of Venus, and established research outposts throughout the Kuiper Belt. We mastered interstellar travel. Our very species underwent a profound transformation. Through advanced genetic engineering, we became stronger, healthier, and vastly more intelligent. We eradicated aging and disease. Yet we never forgot the lessons taught by the Keeper. We sacredly upheld the Prime Directive, treating every form of life we encountered in the cosmos with profound respect. We evolved from conquerors into explorers and guardians. The story of Vespertilio 7 became our central myth, our guiding star. We frequently pointed our telescopes toward the system known as New Dawn. We refused to interfere, but we watched. And we witnessed a barren planet slowly begin to change. Gigantic crystalline forests sprouted across its surface. Flashes of energy pulsed through its thin atmosphere, signaling the birth of a vibrant new ecosystem. The seed planted billions of years ago had finally taken root. The civilization of the crystallids was being reborn. We knew that somewhere deep within this new, crystalline biosphere, a consciousness was growing and developing, and it knew about us. It remembered the small yet courageous people from a distant blue planet who had helped usher in its second birth. Reflecting on this story, we are compelled to ask about the very nature of consciousness itself. The tale of the crystalloids proves that intelligence can assume the most bizarre forms, emerging under the most improbable conditions. We are accustomed to viewing ourselves as the pinnacle of creation, a unique phenomenon. But what if we are merely one of countless variations on a theme? What if the universe teems with life, but we simply lack the means to perceive it? Perhaps life thrives within the plasma clouds of stars, swims in the methane seas of Titan, or even exists as pure energetic entities drifting through intergalactic space. The discovery of Vespertilio 7 shattered our anthropocentric framework. It taught us both humility and curiosity. It forced us to look at the stars not as distant specks of light, but as potential homes for civilizations so utterly alien that the very definition of life may be too narrow to encompass them. This story is a powerful reminder that the cosmos is immense and overflowing with wonder, and our journey through its vast expanse is only just beginning. Who knows what other messages in bottles, what cosmic arcs, and what immense libraries await us out there in the darkness between the stars? What other tales of vanished civilizations remain for us to uncover? And what story, eventually, will we leave behind for others? Central to the crystallid legacy was their guiding philosophy. Through the custodian, they passed on not just their technology, but their entire worldview. At its heart lay the concept of cosmic resonance. They believed the entire universe was a singular, vibrating organism, and all forms of life and consciousness were merely different notes in its infinite symphony. The goal of existence, in their view, was not dominance or sheer survival, but achieving harmony with this universal music. They did not strive to remake the world in their own image. Instead, they sought to understand it and become an organic part of its structure. This philosophy profoundly reshaped the development of human civilization. We stopped viewing nature as a resource to be exploited and began to see it as a partner. We transitioned from an economy of consumption to an economy of equilibrium. Art, science, and spirituality merged into a unified pursuit, understanding our proper place within this cosmic chorus. Perhaps this was the custodian's most significant gift, not technology, but wisdom. Wisdom that allowed us to avoid the path taken by countless civilizations who destroyed themselves in the relentless pursuit of power and limited resources. The crystallids, even in their absence, saved us from ourselves by revealing a different, far more harmonious path for progress. But let's get back to the asteroid itself. Vespertilio 7 wasn't merely a data storage device. Its structure was in itself a masterpiece of art and engineering. Imagine a material capable of complete self-repair. If the asteroid was struck by a meteoroid, nanorobots embedded within its structure would immediately activate, dismantling the damaged sections and rebuilding the crystalline lattice from scratch. The energy source for this process would be the kinetic energy of the impact itself. This technology of regenerative materials unlocked incredible potential for humanity. We learned to build living ships that repair themselves and structures that actually grow stronger over time. Furthermore, the asteroid was capable of sophisticated camouflage. Its surface could alter its reflective properties, becoming virtually invisible to telescopes, or conversely, mimicking the look of a mundane, typical asteroid. This explains why we hadn't detected similar objects before. Most likely, they simply didn't want to be seen. They waited until we reached a specific technological threshold, a point where we could not just detect them, but truly understand them. This speaks volumes about the incredible foresight and patience of the crystallid civilization. They didn't just toss their message into the void, they engineered an intelligent delivery system designed to activate only when the recipient was finally ready. But what about the signal itself? The way it was encoded still baffles scientists. It wasn't merely a digital recording. The information was woven into the very structure of space-time within the crystal matrix. It was akin to a hologram, but not three-dimensional. It was multidimensional. Every minute fragment of the crystal contained the entirety of the knowledge, though with varying degrees of clarity. To access deeper layers of information, one didn't simply read the data. They had to attune themselves to a specific vibrational frequency of the crystal lattice. This meant that access to knowledge was fundamentally nonlinear. You couldn't just download everything at once. You first had to comprehend the fundamental principles before you could unlock the next level. It was the ultimate learning system designed to protect an immature mind from information it wasn't yet ready to handle. For instance, the principles of gravity control only became accessible after complete mastery of the unified field theory, and the technology for matter creation only after fully grasping the ethical foundations of the non-interference code. The Keeper wasn't just a library. It was the perfect teacher, guiding us step by step along the path of discovery, preventing us from stumbling and causing harm to ourselves. One of the most astonishing sections of the Crystallid's library was dedicated to the other civilizations they had encountered over billions of years of their travels. It turned out we were far from the first, and certainly not the only ones. The galaxy teemed with life in every conceivable form. The Crystallids had compiled a comprehensive record which they called the Galactic Encyclopedia. It detailed civilizations on gas giants, beings made of plasma, thriving in the atmospheres of stars. There were races dwelling in the subsurface oceans of icy moons. There were even descriptions of non-biological forms of intelligence, pure mathematical structures existing as patterns within the quantum foam. Most of these civilizations were not technological in the way we understand it. They built no starships and broadcast no radio signals. Their evolution had followed a different path, one of inner contemplation and profound integration with their environment. This is precisely why we had failed to notice them. Our search had been too narrow. We were only looking for reflections of ourselves. The crystallids, however, taught us to see intelligence in all its complexity and diversity. This catalogue became our roadmap. We now know where to look for our galactic neighbors, but we also know that contact must be approached with extreme caution and respect. We are no longer lonely children wandering a dark forest. We are part of a vast and diverse galactic family. But that same catalogue contained a deeply unsettling section, a section dedicated to the great filters. The crystallids, over their incredibly long history, had witnessed the downfall of hundreds of sentient civilizations. And in doing so, they had identified predictable patterns. They noted that certain developmental stages become critical, make or break tests for any intelligent species. The first filter was the discovery of nuclear energy. Many civilizations failed this test, wiping themselves out in massive global conflicts. The second filter involved the creation of artificial intelligence. Some species developed AI that eventually spiraled out of control and annihilated its creators. The third and most challenging filter was achieving interstellar spaceflight and making contact with other species. A mishandled first contact, they warned, could lead to catastrophic consequences. The history of the crystallids served as our textbook for navigating these filters. They themselves had endured numerous trials, and their experience, meticulously recorded in the Ark, became an invaluable gift to us. They showed us the traps we might otherwise fall into. It is perhaps thanks solely to their intervention that we still exist. We stand on the shoulders of giants without even knowing it. Vesperilio 7 wasn't merely a message. It was a lifeline thrown to us from the depths of time. Among the most poetic and philosophical texts recovered from the crystallid libraries was one detailing their unique concept of death. For them, beings who were practically immortal, death was not a tragedy. They simply called it the return to the stars. When a crystallid felt its time was near, it would journey to the closest young star and immerse itself within its protoplanetary disk. There, its body would decompose into atoms of silicon and various metals, the raw building blocks for new planets, and perhaps new life. They didn't vanish, they merely transitioned to a different state, becoming a vital part of the eternal cosmic cycle. This profound concept fundamentally changed how humanity viewed its own mortality. We ceased fearing death and began embracing it as a natural state of being, an opportunity to return the matter and energy we had temporarily borrowed from the universe. This philosophy quickly became integrated into our new rituals. Rather than burying bodies in the earth, we began launching them towards stellar nurseries, the birthplaces of new worlds. This was our way of saying thank you to the cosmos for the gift of life, and paying homage to the wisdom of the crystallids, who taught us not to fear eternity. Despite all the knowledge we've gathered, one profound mystery remains unsolved, the secret of the Great Divide itself. What exactly triggered the shift in fundamental constants? The crystallids documented the effect, but were ultimately unable to pinpoint the cause. In their ancient chronicles, this event is described simply as an external, incomprehensible force. Was it merely a random fluctuation in the fabric of the universe? Or perhaps the result of an experiment conducted by some even older, more powerful civilization, one that may have been toying with reality itself? This enigma continues to preoccupy the minds of our scientists. Some believe it was a natural process, an inherent part of the universe's own evolution. Others put forward far bolder hypotheses, for example, that our universe is just one of many in the multiverse, and the Great Divide was caused by a leak of physical laws bleeding in from a neighboring reality. If this is true, it suggests that the fundamental laws of nature are far less immutable than we once thought. And perhaps one day, our own carbon-based life will face its own great divide. This realization compels us to cherish every moment of our existence and push forward with our research, so that we may one day be prepared for whatever surprises the cosmos has waiting for us. The events surrounding Vespertilio 7 had a monumental impact on Earth's artistic landscape. A new genre emerged, crystalline opera, featuring music composed around mathematical harmonies derived directly from the crystallid signal. Artists began attempting to visualize the invisible realms of gravitational fields and dark matter. Architects started designing buildings that replicated the complex fractal structures observed on the asteroid's surface. Even fashion shifted, popularizing fabrics and jewelry that mimicked the shimmering facets of programmable crystals. Having encountered something truly immense and utterly alien, humanity experienced a creative surge comparable only to the Renaissance. We transcended the limits of our habitual perception, and this profound change resonated through every aspect of our culture. We began to think and feel on a different scale, not the scale of a single city or a single planet, but the scale of the entire galaxy. Art became our vehicle for making sense of humanity's new place in the cosmos. It was a means of expressing the profound awe and exhilaration we felt when we peered behind the veil of mystery and glimpsed a universe far more complex, beautiful, and astonishing than we had ever dared to imagine. It was, quite simply, the genuine awakening of our species. Let's take a moment to consider the sheer probability of such an event. Could an asteroid like that actually have reached us? From the perspective of modern science, the concept of silicon-based life isn't inherently unscientific. Like carbon, silicon can form 4 chemical bonds, making it theoretically capable of creating complex molecular chains. The main hurdle is that those bonds are less stable. Furthermore, silicon oxide, which is essentially sand, is a solid, unlike gaseous carbon dioxide. This significantly complicates the metabolic processes required for life as we know it. However, under conditions drastically different from those on Earth, perhaps involving ultra-low temperatures or a completely different chemical environment, silicon could potentially form the basis of life. The concept of encoding information into a crystalline structure also has a solid scientific foundation. Even today, we are developing quartz data storage technologies designed to preserve data for millions of years. A civilization billions of years more advanced than our own could certainly have refined this technology to absolute perfection. So, while the story we are discussing today is fiction, it is grounded in entirely plausible scientific hypotheses, and that fact makes it all the more fascinating. It forces us to ask, what if something like this has already occurred, but we simply missed the evidence? What if right now such an arc is drifting somewhere in Saturn's orbit, waiting for the moment we are finally ready to listen? Here is an interesting paradox. Gaining access to virtually limitless knowledge didn't diminish humanity's drive for exploration. Quite the opposite. The crystallid library wasn't a destination, it was a starting line. It handed us the map, but we still had to make the journey ourselves. We found answers to countless questions, yet every answer opened up hundreds of new ones. For example, learning about other civilizations only made us eager to meet them. Hearing about the Great Divide sparked a profound need to understand its true nature. Knowledge didn't breed complacency, it only intensified our curiosity. This, perhaps, is the fundamental nature of the mind. It simply cannot stop seeking. The keeper understood this perfectly when transmitting those archives. He didn't just give us the fish, he gave us the rod. Even more profoundly, he showed us an entire ocean we hadn't even suspected existed. He ignited a thirst for discovery within us. a thirst that will never be quenched. And perhaps this was his ultimate goal. Not merely to save the memory of his own people, but to light the spark of inquiry in another younger species, one capable of continuing their great mission, the mission of comprehending the universe. To wrap up this section of our narrative, I want to touch upon something deeply personal. The archives of the custodian contained more than just scientific data and historical records. We also found personal notes, something like the individual diaries of certain crystallids woven into the overall structure, and one of these entries, apparently belonging to one of the Ark's original creators, read, "We are departing. Our world is dissolving into dust, but we feel no despair. We feel hope, because we know that knowledge cannot truly die. It is like starlight traveling through the dark until it reaches someone's eyes, and the moment you, whoever you are, read these very lines, a fragment of our consciousness will be reborn within yours. We will be alive again, not in our crystalline bodies, but within your thoughts. Remember us, and know that you are not alone." This simple, moving thought, which travelled across light years and billions of years to reach us, is perhaps the very essence, the true heart of this entire story. This is not a story about technology or distant worlds. It is a story about the continuity of intelligence, the legacy of the mind. It is about the greatest creation in the universe, the thought itself. And as long as thought exists, as long as there is someone capable of wonder, of asking questions and seeking answers, the universe will remain alive, and you and I are part of that eternal unfolding process. Just when it seems like the entire story has been told and every loose end tied up, one last staggering fact emerges. It was discovered only recently during the analysis of the deepest, most heavily encrypted layers of the crystallid library, layers that became accessible to humanity only after we reached a new level of technological and intellectual development. It turns out that the Great Separation, the catastrophe that ultimately destroyed their civilization, was no accident. The archives contained traces of calculations showing that the crystallids had known about the coming shift in the fundamental physical constants millions of years before it actually happened. But the most astounding revelation, they could have stopped it. They possessed the technology necessary to stabilize the very fabric of space-time within their sector of the galaxy. Yet, they consciously chose not to. Why? The answer lies within their final philosophical treatise. They concluded that this change, the one that would destroy them, was absolutely necessary for the emergence of a completely new, different form of life. Carbon-based life. The very life to which we belong. The old physical constants simply didn't allow for the formation of complex organic molecules. The universe as it was essentially tuned for silicon-based life. For us to appear, they had to step aside. And that was the choice they made. They sacrificed themselves, their entire civilization, to give us the chance to be born. Vespertilio 7 wasn't just a message or a seed. It was both an apology and a blessing. They didn't just pass on their knowledge, they gifted us the very possibility of existence. We are their unwitting children, born from the ashes of their world. And this knowledge changes absolutely everything. Thank you for spending this time with me, traveling through the depths of cosmos and history. This story is a powerful reminder that the universe is still full of mysteries, and the greatest discoveries are yet to come. If you enjoyed this lecture, please consider supporting the channel. Give us a like, subscribe, and hit that notification bell so you don't miss our next journey to the stars. Now here is the most important question I want to leave you with. Knowing the full truth, how would humanity proceed? Do you believe we should feel guilt or gratitude? And what does this extraordinary act of self-sacrifice tell us about the nature of intelligence in the universe? Please share your thoughts in the comments below. I am genuinely eager to read them. Now, close your eyes. And may the knowledge that we are the inheritors of a truly great and benevolent civilization bring you the calmest and brightest dreams. Good night.